Welcome to the Beta Cooks podcast, and this is the second one. This is the second episode. Um, the first one went pretty well. Um, my name's Rains, and I've been a cook slash chef for the past almost 5 years in a professional setting, of course. And I last time I spoke about my experiences in professional life and everything in between, kind of. And I tried to make it a little concise, a little how would you say it? A little very little clear. But I also realized that sometimes you just do not have the ability to be clear about everything. So instead, when like listening back to what I said, I agree with most of it. Some things might just be things I just said in the heat of the moment, and I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. But I did realize that there are some things that I should discuss that I didn't discuss last time around, and the other things that I did discuss that maybe wasn't exactly the most fun thing to do. And I found like a whole ability to like make things clear for myself, like what I enjoyed doing and what I didn't enjoy doing, kind of. And to be honest, I think the last time around I was talking a lot about what it feels like to be a chef, right? And this time around I want to talk more about what I work with. So I want to talk about the the generics of working in a kitchen, the generics of a kitchen itself, generics of working with a particular style of people. Essentially, I've worked with a lot of different characters, I would say, and that would be that most of them are weirdos, because that's You guys ever see that meme of front of house, and it's all of these guys who are just completely uh well oiled, well oiled. What does that even mean? No, I mean, like, they're very chic, posh way of dressing. Like suits, ties, dresses. All that sort. And then the kitchen side, you just see that image of the Pirates of the Caribbean. That's exactly what it is. The kitchen is where you find people from all walks of life that have somehow found each other, and they just shouldn't like be working together at all. Like it shouldn't work. They should not be able to be a team in the first place. They are, and that's just a testament to what it means to be a chef, right? You are adaptable. You are very easy to mold. To be fair, to be more precise. Instead, but apart from that, I wanted to just be like, I think I forgot to mention that. That was something very important about kitchens and kitchen life, and actually, like, just restaurant and hotel life. I think in hotels though, there is a lot more like a 9 to 5 work week vibe to it. That's what I think. I've never worked in a hotel or a cafe or whatever, but I think cafes would be a bit more similar to restaurants. Um, but hotels are very different. Hotel kitchens would also be, at least from what I've heard from people that have worked there, they tend to be more like 9 to 5 jobs because people are more prone to, yeah, per hour work. And so that's out of the way. And while listening to last week's podcast, I realized that I wasn't very clear about what a regular kitchen actually has. So, a regular kitchen is basically very similar. Kitchens from across the world will have 4 or 5 things that every kitchen has. So if you got a dishwash section, which is basically where you get the dishes from, and that's where the people wash dishes. That is possibly the most important section in the whole kitchen. Because without washed dishes, you can't cook. And without cooking, it doesn't really matter. Like, you can do without a cook. But without a dishwash, you are screwed. A dishwash can do everything, but a cook can't exactly do everything. So, my chef once said, if you can't respect your dishwasher, the person who dishwashes, not the actual dishwashing machine, you don't need to respect the machine. That's okay. It's not like Terminator, where if you don't respect the machine, you're gonna get killed. No, that's not how it works. But but the thing is that, so he said that if you don't respect the dishwasher, the person, then there is no point in you being here. You give the same amount of respect to your dishwasher as you give to your chef. And if you listen to last week's podcast, chef in this case means the guy in charge, right? The guy in charge is someone that we talk about as a very specific kind of person. Some people that are in charge are very demanding of respect, and some people, like what I've been able to work with, luckily, are very chill. They're very down to earth. They're very okay with everything kind of people. So the second section in a kitchen is the pass. The pass is basically the place where all the dishes get finished, checked, and sent off to the restaurant, to the tables, kind of. This section tends to be a culmination of all other sections. Basically what it means is that all dishes go towards a pass, or pass, or passe, whatever you want to call it. All languages have different ways of saying it. It goes there, it gets checked that it's finished. If not finished, it's sent back, or it gets made. Like, it gets finished off with garnishing or whatever, and then sent off. This is also the person that announces the tickets. So in like a few years ago, even now in a lot of kitchens, you work with tickets, because restaurants are inherently just bad for the environment, right? If you go out to eat, you will not be going to a place which is sustainable. Like, you can't expect to be no plastic place. No waste, you could get it, but it doesn't happen very often. But no plastic, yeah, that's not gonna happen. That's the amount of waste that goes out of a kitchen is insane. So just keep that in mind. But so the person, so what was I saying actually? Oh yeah, so the kitchen, the pass generally nowadays has a electronic screen, or some restaurants still work with the old-fashioned piece of paper with like a whole written on there what you need to make type of thing. I work with a computer, so we get on a big like monitor. We have a monitor, touchscreen monitor, and on there we get the table number, the dishes, and what course they're on. For example, if they're on a snack, they get a snack. Like that kind of thing. But there are other places which also have a very different way of working. But anyway, so the person on the pass announces the tickets. So he is the point of contact from the front of the house, or which is the waiters and waitresses and managers and restaurant people that speak with guests, basically. So the contact point between them and the kitchen is the guy on the pass. Because that's, if you have like 5 different people keep in contact with, there is no communication and there is no clarity in between what is happening. So basically that's in most kitchens, if not all, that's how it works. In some kitchens, you do have the distinction between the pastry and the warm side, or just the whole dinner except the pastry, dessert. You have that distinction, but not always. That's usually not the case, but it is there in some places. The next section, as I was saying, is pastry. Pastry or dessert is basically what it says. It's always where the cold stuff comes from. The cold desserts come from. And generally that's mostly their job, and that's the least pressure environment during service. Because what do we know about dessert, right? You know that when you're having a dessert, when you're at a restaurant, you order a dessert, you've had food already, so you're not in a rush to get your last course. It's okay. Whatever time they take, they take it. I have had my food, and I am not waiting to be filled. Like, I'm not waiting for my hunger to be quenched. I'm just there to just have food, and I get a dessert. Why not? I'm just gonna get the dessert, and I'll be fine. So that's the least pressure environment during service. This is a whole different matter when you consider that during the mise en place, which is the prep time, kind of. That's what we call that. Your prep is called your mise en place. So your mise en place is basically the worst time for the pastries, because generally the pastry has a lot of precise things that need to happen in a particular order or a particular way, and that just screws with everything. It really does. It just screws with everything because you're very methodical, but it's so much work in the end that they spend more time on their mise en place. So in most kitchens, the last ones to finish their prep are the pastry, or is the pastry. That is generally the case. Not always, but generally. And after that, you've got the cold side. And this is for the starters and salads and stuff. I work in a restaurant where we don't really have we have one salad on the menu, but that's about it. But we just have snacks coming from there. It's called the cold side, but you can have warm dishes from there as well, of course, because that's how that works. Because that makes sense, right? Having warm dishes from the cold side, it makes alright. And then after that, you've got for the main course, you've got the warm side. Generally, most restaurants or cafes or whatever have the warm side divided into two parts. One is for the main course and one is for everything else. That's usually how it works. So the kitchen that I work in right now, we have the cold side, we have the pastry, we have the dishwash, and then we've got the warm side split into two parts, and we've got the pastas course. We've got the warm side split into two parts. We've got the grill, because that's where the grill is. Duh. And then we've got the fryer, because that's where the fryer is. I mean, you can't make it any easier than that, right? So that's basically how great that is, right? It's just simple, it's nothing out of the way, whatever. And I'd like to say that. So the thing about my whole idea about everything other than what we have had spoken about, I think the kitchen is absolutely very very straightforward is the word I'm looking for. So everything is very straightforward. Kitchens are very straightforward and very brass or brash. Is that the word? I don't know. I think brash is the right word. So the kitchens are very brash. So we are very casual with each other. Basically, we're very, very casual with each other because we say, screw you to people, because of course I'm paraphrasing here. We say a lot of stuff which you technically shouldn't. So if any of you have seen Hell's Kitchen or Kitchen Nightmares with Gordon Ramsay, we are kind of like that. So I want to talk about a bit of story time, right? I want to, so in these podcasts, I want to do some segments, right? I want to do a segment about stories. I want to do some stories about my own workplaces, but also workplaces that I've heard about. So let me talk about. So last week I talked about me pranking some people. This week I want to talk about the whole notion of working in an environment where you can actually have fun in a way that you get change. So a lot of restaurants try and keep the same menu across the board, right? Just throughout the year, keep the same menu. I know, very sustainable. Taking things out of season and still having them on the menu, that doesn't work. It's also more expensive, but that's not a different matter. So I've had a whole time to reflect on this entire idea of being able to voice myself, right? But there are places where the menu changes so often that you can actually end up changing stuff just enough to make things interesting for yourself. So there was a time where I heard of a person that was working with a very renowned chef, renowned, very known chef in the whole Dutch, because I'm Dutch myself, so I have my experience will be about Dutch people mostly, but I don't work in a Dutch kitchen, so it's very weird. Anyway, so this person in the Dutch restaurant industry is pretty well known, and he is known to be very. He was working in a Michelin, one-star Michelin restaurant in a hotel. Which, let me tell you something. Getting a Michelin star in a hotel is very difficult because the quality you need to spend is like the quality you need to like reach is very high. The plus side though is you have a lot of money to work with because, as you might know, hotels they make a lot of profit on rooms. So restaurants can afford to experiment a little bit more with their food. So anyway, this was a chef that was basically a tyrant. Like this guy was pretty well known, but he was absolutely a tyrant. He was a chef there, and there was no way. Like there was very difficult to justify firing your chef as a restaurant manager. That's very difficult, right? So there is this guy that works in kitchens that he was known to be called in Dutch the term is uitwerker. So he's basically his job was to be such a menace to people around him that they want to quit themselves. You get what I mean? It's like me getting hired by a restaurant to bully someone so that that person leaves because we don't want to fire him. Because if we fire him, that ruins his reputation, and that means that we can never get him back. That's the thought process. It's very cynical, right? It's very cynical about this. But so the second person, let's say person A was the chef, and the person who was a tyrant, and person B was the person who is getting hired to kick someone out. So how do you justify hiring a person that is whose job is literally like you don't know as a chef, you don't know that oh this person is being hired to make me want to quit, right? That's insane, right? That whole thought is insane. That's insane. Like why would you do that why would you have that as a thought in the first place as a restaurant manager or a restaurant owner or whatever? That's like what? It doesn't happen. But in this case, it did. So this person B got hired, and apparently during one service night, pretty busy service night, and they had an argument. And then person B just decided to beat the ever-loving shit out of the chef. Now, this was in 1997, 98, late 90s, early 2000s. Even then, that's crazy. You beating up your chef, like physically, to the point that that person fainted, was laying in the corner of a kitchen while everyone was just going about their day, working around this person for a solid whole dinner service. And apparently the next day, the chef didn't even show up. How insane do you have to be to, first of all, beat up your chef, right? Or no, first of all, to even be hired by a restaurant manager or restaurant owner to make your chef want to quit. How cynical does that have to be? And how crazy do you have to be? And how intense do you have to be that you beat someone up in the middle of service and the whole team just doesn't care? And then proceeds to literally move out. Just not show up. No contact, no nothing, just never show up again. For all we could know, like, he's alive. That person is alive and kicking. He's fine. He's been working in different restaurants, being much better. Not a tyrant, at least not that we've heard of after. But that is insane. Another story about some extreme situations was in a restaurant, also had a 1-star. Now, the reason I'm saying that I'm not saying that all Michelin star restaurants are just filled with tyrants and people that are just unlikable. I'm not saying that, okay? It's just most are. And there's a reason for that, right? There's a reason. The reason is the level of commitment, pressure, and demand that restaurant owners, chefs have of the team is so high. So the stress relief, you need to out it somehow. And remember, most cooks are just like oddballs from society that just had the misfortune of finding each other. And I'm saying this knowing fully well that I might be a part of that whole oddball who were just not fit for society and ended up in the kitchen. I am absolutely for it. I'm absolutely understanding of that fact. But the whole idea that there is violence, like nowadays it's a lot less, but 10 years ago, it was pretty common for the oppressive system. I had a YouTube short on it last week, or something like that, about the oppression. That if is the prevalent, it is very much prevalent, but it's not as extreme as it was previously. So this is from This is from like a few years back, right? So there's this guy. He's the executive chef. If you want to know what the whole hierarchy of the chef's hierarchy is, I'll go over it later. But I'll go over it on a short, maybe even. But so he was an executive chef, and he was usually 9 out of 10 chefs from 10 years ago had anger management issues. It's just a fact. It's like a two peas in a pod, right? You can't have a chef without anger management issues. That was the whole norm, and you were just that's how you were. That's how you, as a chef, communicated your frustration. Just be absolutely pissed at everything. If it didn't go to the T, if it didn't go right to the T, you were pissed. That's basically how that worked. But this chef was one of those kind of chefs, right? And apparently he was walking. Not, I don't know if it was during dinner service or not, but he was just walking in the kitchen. Kitchen was supposedly the kitchen was very narrow, so it was a long kitchen but very narrow. So the walls, it was like there's like you have the pass on this side, you want the warm side on this side, so you have the wall right behind it. So it's not very spacious, essentially. Um, so he saw like a peanut butter jar sitting near the pass on top. This kitchen didn't use peanut butter, obviously. It was for snack or something. So he said to one of the people, "Can someone please clean that up? Just clean it up right now." And just why not? Why? Came back, did another round at some point during the day. It was still there. He said, "Can someone please clean this up right now?" Kept walking, all fine. Third time, some hours later, he saw it again. And that's when all hell broke loose. He took the jar, the glass jar of peanut butter, took it, and just apparently, according to the chefs, flung it at the wall on the other side. So if you've got like so if this is my bed, right? So you've got the pass on this side, and you've got the other wall there. Takes the freaking glass jar and just yeets it to the wall. Like, what are you doing? Right? It's a glass. It's glass. It's gonna shatter. Obviously, it's gonna shatter, right? Yeah, well, it shattered. Apparently, some guy had to go to the hospital to get stitches. And then that guy didn't even clean it up. So the chef doesn't. It's obviously it's upper subsistence. So the chef doesn't clean. He's above all that, right? Doesn't clean. And then he goes downstairs, and then end of the night, around 12 o'clock, he goes downstairs. He goes behind an oven where obviously you don't clean that part very often, but nothing goes there anyway. Goes behind it, he says, "This is not clean. Clean it. Clean it." This is at 12 o'clock at night, right? So they're cleaning for half an hour, 45 minutes, an hour. This is a very big team, so it happens very quickly. They clean it. He comes back. While someone is cleaning that section, like she's just finished cleaning that section, he goes there, checks it. There's a little bit of dust. Like, not something you need to, like, scrub or anything. Just like a little bit of dust, you just wipe it up clean with a wet towel or something. He says, "This is not clean, is it?" Some student commits the biggest atrocity you can do, especially during that time, ever. And guess what it is? The guy says, "That's not true at all." Yeah. So if the people that are chefs and who are listening to this podcast right now, you will know that's literally a death sentence as a student. Talking back to your chef and then saying that your chef is wrong. Are you okay? Is that all right with you? Like, are you in a situation where you actually are able to think clearly or not? Because that's literally equivalent of a death sentence. Well, they didn't get a death sentence exactly. They were told as a team to clean everything. Again. Everything. Well, apparently they went home at 4 o'clock. Or 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock. That's not fun. That is not. When you've had a long day already, and you've had that whole peanut butter incident happen, you've already done extra cleaning that you didn't want to do. Then you go downstairs, you have to clean more. And then some student forces you, gets you in a situation where you are forced to clean. That person is getting bullied for the next 5 months. Minimum. So, those are some stories, right? Like, there are some stories about how tyranny of chefs is very prevalent. Next week, I think I will talk about more about those kind of stories. If you want to know more stories, let me know. Subscribe if you want to do it. Also, I've been uploading the podcast to Spotify as well. So if you don't have the time or the patience and you don't want to see my face, go to Spotify, leave a review. That would be I would really really appreciate that. The first podcast is up. The second one will come up around the time you see this, so it'll be fine as well. Now, I was gonna talk about the whole hierarchy system. I did touch up upon it last week, but I realized that might not be very clear about it. And the whole kitchen system is based around very much of a strict hierarchy because chefs are egotistical narcissists. But I think I can say that with no grain of salt. Like, it's absolutely true. Most chefs are narcissists, if not egoists. That means that you hurt their ego, they're gonna kill you. Like, they are not gonna be happy with you, and they'll make your life a living hell. And the whole point of that is respect and experience. The kitchen is very important, is experience. The most important thing is experience, if not education. Like, um, education will get you only so far, but experience gets you even further, essentially. Um, and the kitchen has a very strict hierarchy and generally starts off with, at the very top, the person we call the executive chef or the chef, depending on how big the company is, how big the whole chain is. So the guy who decides everything is generally like the owner or the chef. And then if you have a big company with multiple restaurants, you've got an executive chef. This person generally, the executive chefs generally don't work in the kitchen. Like generally, like 9 out of 10 times they don't work in the kitchen. And they generally are the people with a lot of experience. So they have spent the last 15 to 20 years in the kitchen already, and of which 5 to 10 years as chef. So the executive chefs, they are done with the whole working the long hours. They're working the 9 to 5 now, and they're in the whole round of finishing up their career, kind of. And they're either become full-time owners behind the computer, doing all the calculations and stuff, and once in a while helping out in the kitchen, but not much, not enough to verify them as the person on the work floor. Under them, they have either an executive sous chef or directly goes to the chef. If you have an executive chef, you will have an executive sous chef, who is the person who generally still works in the kitchen, but he's on his way out, right? Or you have the chef, and then that person, the chef, is always in the kitchen. He still works in the kitchen. So you can have an executive chef and then chef, or you can have executive chef, executive sous chef, and then a chef. That's how it works. Under the chef, the right hand man of the chef is the sous chef. The right hand man of the sous chef is a junior sous chef. So far, so clear? Makes sense, right? And then after that, you've got the sections. So this so far has always been about the restaurant or the kitchen itself as a whole. After this, you've got the kitchen being split into sections. In French, these are called parties, or translates to part, kind of. And then you've got chef of that section, chef de partie. I know it makes so much sense. It's so straightforward. It's actually crazy. After that, you have the demi chef de partie, who's the right hand man of the chef de partie. Pretty close. Why it's not a junior chef de partie, I don't know. It is just demi chef de partie. After that, you've got the cooks, then you've got the kitchen helpers, and then you've got the dishwashers. Now, usually the dishwashers are dishwashers, but they help in the kitchen as well. So usually, most kitchens you will not see the position of kitchen helper, unless the person is 14 and he's just starting his first job, and he's not going to be working in the kitchen, the dishwasher. Then you have a kitchen helper, but other than that, it's generally not a kitchen helper. There's no such thing. So that's the hierarchy, and a student would be somewhere between kitchen helper and a cook, right? So going back to my story of the student saying that to the executive chef, it's like a chihuahua going up to a wolf and biting the wolf. Like, it's not gonna go well, right? It's just like they're both dogs, but they're both on the same family tree, but that wolf is gonna eat that chihuahua alive. That rat of a dog is just gonna get completely annihilated. Another example would be like a dragon and then just like a fucking freaking ant, right? That ant is gonna just get crushed. There's no way that ant survives that. It happens very often in the kitchen actually. So I'm thinking today the podcast will be a little shorter. I thought maybe, people might not be into a long podcast. Tomorrow I'm gonna upload another podcast. So I'm gonna record another one. I'll do that live. It will come out next week, obviously, to the people on YouTube. So if you're watching on YouTube, you missed it. You missed the live. The live will be on like this channel, like right here. You see my name and you see the Twitch channel. Well, that's gonna be on Twitch. So let's check it out if you want. If you want to not see my ugly mug, you can go to Spotify and you will find this podcast there as well. Please do leave a review. Subscribe if you're watching on YouTube. Like it. Leave me questions, comments, dislikes, things you don't agree with, things you think I can improve on. This is all a work of progress. And if you want me to ask someone to get onto this podcast, I'd love to. Tag them in the comments as well. I'd really appreciate it. And let's see what we can do with this. Thanks a lot for today. And I'll see you guys next week. Or tomorrow if you are watching this the day this was uploaded and the next day, the next podcast. GG's. Thank you for being here. My name's Rains. And this was the Beta Cooks Podcast, number 2.